Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Victor Vance never imagined that a simple backyard barbecue could detonate his life. At 41, he had meticulously constructed a career as a supply chain director in Denver. His world was one of forecasts, of logistics, and of risk management. A world of calm, analytical precision. He had earned his respect. He had earned his comfortable life. His days were a fortress of strategic decisions, of performance reviews, and the quiet satisfaction of a system running exactly as designed. It was a profession that rewarded control, trust in data, and an unerring ability to foresee and mitigate disruption. All those skills, ironically, left him utterly unprepared for the systemic failure brewing inside his own home. Caroline Vance, his wife. She was 37. She worked as a senior publicist for a high-end lifestyle PR firm, a job that seemed tailor-made for her. She was charismatic, impeccably organized, and possessed a natural talent for spinning ordinary corporate announcements into compelling narratives. Victor had always admired her professional drive, the way she could command a room, soothe an anxious CEO. He saw her career, like his, as a vital component of the life they had built, a joint venture. She balanced it all with what he had always perceived as seamless efficiency, managing the household and the lives of their two children, Owen, who was 10, and Chloe, aged 7. They had been married for 11 years. To any outside observer, their life was the very picture of suburban stability. Their two-story home in a quiet Littleton neighborhood, with its meticulously manicured lawn, the children's laughter, a regular weekend soundtrack. Their routine was predictable. A well-oiled machine. Family dinners. Homework supervision. Dutiful attendance at school functions. Victor saw their life not as a romance, but as a successful, long-term partnership. A venture that was meeting all its key performance indicators. The monthly barbecues at Caroline's parents' house were a non-negotiable part of this routine. Her family was a boisterous, sprawling clan. Loud, emotionally open. The kind of people Victor had learned to navigate, rather than truly embrace. He played his part. A necessary social obligation. A small price to pay for the domestic harmony he valued. Her father, a retired history professor, was the designated grill master. Always ready with a cold IPA and a well-worn anecdote. Her mother, a warm but subtly probing woman, produced an endless supply of potato salads and decadent desserts. There were uncles, aunts, cousins, and a swarm of children, tearing across the yard, creating a chaotic, joyful tableau that Victor observed, with a detached sense of approval. It was the image of a happy family. And he was at its center. That August Sunday, the Colorado sun was sharp and brilliant. A cloudless sky. A perfect afternoon. Victor arrived with Caroline and the children just after 1 o'clock, carrying a cooler of craft beers he'd selected with care. Owen and Chloe bolted from the car before it had fully stopped, vanishing into a throng of their cousins. Caroline, wearing a simple white sundress and sunglasses, looked radiant. She embraced her mother. Victor watched the scene with a sense of quiet ownership. The familiar feeling of a successful project review. This was his family. This was the life he had built. The afternoon unfolded according to script. Victor engaged in conversation by the grill, discussing interest rates, the Broncos' prospects. He laughed at the appropriate times, offered his opinions with measured confidence. Caroline, meanwhile, was a blur of social grace. She moved between groups, refilling drinks, sharing laughs, and periodically, glancing at her phone. Victor noted it, as he always did. He filed it away under the category of work necessity. Her job demanded constant connectivity. It was a fundamental part of her role. Or at least, that was the narrative he had always accepted. It was around 3 in the afternoon, when Leo, Caroline's younger brother, approached him. Leo was 35. Cybersecurity. The quiet one, more an observer than a participant. A calm, unobtrusive presence. But this time, something was different. Leo's posture was rigid. His expression tight. With a discomfort that bordered on anxiety. He was holding his phone. In a white-knuckled grip. "Vic." His voice was low. Almost a whisper. But charged with an undeniable urgency. "Can I talk to you for a second?" He paused. In private. Victor's internal threat assessment system immediately went on high alert. This was not a casual chat about the weather. He nodded. Excused himself with a practiced smile. And followed Leo toward the back of the yard. Behind a large shed. Where a cluster of aspen trees offered a sliver of privacy. A cold knot began to form in Victor's stomach. The system was flashing a warning. Leo wouldn't meet his eyes. He stared at the dry grass. Clearly fighting a battle within himself. This is really hard, man. You're a good guy. You've always been good to Caroline. Good to the kids. And that's why I can't. He took a shaky breath. I can't just let it go. He finally looked up. His eyes were filled with a mixture of pity and resolve. You deserve to know the truth. He said it in a rush. Caroline is cheating on you. The world didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. For Victor. It was as if a critical server in his mind had just crashed. The words were data points. Data his brain received, but could not process. A language it refused to translate. He could still hear the distant laughter from the party. The sizzle of the grill. The high-pitched shrieks of the children. Everything was normal. Except that nothing was. A wave of nausea washed over him. He put a hand on the rough wood of the shed to steady himself. What? Leo, what are you talking about? The voice that came out was thin. A stranger's voice. Leo's expression was unwavering. About 3 weeks ago, she asked me to look at her laptop. Said it was running slow, freezing up. I went over to your house during the day. You were at work. She was picking up the kids from summer camp. He paused. Letting the setup sink in. While I was running diagnostics. I saw her phone messages were synced to the laptop, the app was open on the desktop. And Vic? I saw things I was never supposed to see. Victor felt his heart begin to pound. A heavy, rhythmic thud against his ribs. The drumbeat of an approaching disaster. What kind of things, he asked, though a part of him was screaming. Don't ask. Reboot the system. Pretend this never happened. Leo unlocked his phone. He had come prepared. He had brought evidence. Messages. With a guy named Dominic Thorne. I looked him up. He's a partner at a marketing agency her firm works with. Vic, these aren't work messages. He turned the screen toward Victor. The first screenshot was a conversation. Plans for hotel meetings. Excuses they had crafted. Then came the devastating sequence Leo had documented. Can't wait to see you tonight. Pause. The Maven is booked. Room 812. Pause. My husband is traveling for the quarterly review next week. The whole afternoon is ours. There were photos. A picture of Caroline in lingerie Victor had never seen. A selfie. Clearly not meant for her husband's eyes. Conversations filled with a casual, devastating intimacy. Planning trysts with the same efficiency she planned her corporate events. Victor's legs felt weak. He took the phone from Leo, his own hands trembling. He zoomed in. Reading every word. Absorbing every image. As if in a trance. The messages spanned months. 6 months. The most recent ones were from 2 days ago. 2 days ago, while he had been having dinner with Caroline, while she had been kissing their children goodnight, she had been living this other life, maintaining this catastrophic lie. Why did you wait 3 weeks? Victor's voice was sharper now. The shock solidifying into the cold, hard anger of betrayal. Because I didn't know what to do, Leo admitted, his voice cracking. She's my sister, Vic. I was torn. I kept hoping she'd end it, hoping I could confront her and she'd confess. But then I saw the new messages from this week. It's not stopping. And I realized, you deserve better than this. You don't deserve to live in a lie. Victor felt a strange, bitter gratitude. Leo had made a courageous, high-stakes move, choosing loyalty to the truth, over the easier path of family silence. Can you send these to me? Victor's voice was steady now. The operations manager inside him was taking over. Switching from crisis mode to action plan. This was no longer a personal tragedy. It was a breach of contract. A situation that required a decisive response. Leo nodded. A moment later, Victor's phone buzzed in his pocket, loaded with over 24 pieces of irrefutable evidence. "Thank you for telling me," Victor said, placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. The gesture felt formal. Corporate. "I know this wasn't easy. You did the right thing." Leo just nodded, relief mixing with the sadness in his eyes. Victor walked back toward the barbecue. But he was a different man. The version of him that had arrived an hour ago. The man who believed in the stability of his well-managed life. Was gone. In his place was an observer. A strategist. Watching the scene through a new, brutally revealing lens. There she was. Laughing with a cousin. Handing a cup of lemonade to a nephew. Tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. As she checked her phone, for what felt like the 10th time that afternoon. Every gesture was now tainted. Every smile. A potential lie. When her eyes flickered toward her screen, Victor no longer saw a diligent publicist. He saw a woman arranging her next rendezvous. Right there. In the heart of her family. While he, the oblivious husband, stood feet away debating football. A furnace of rage ignited within him. Hot and pure. But he banked the fire. Kept his expression neutral. He would not cause a scene here. Caroline didn't deserve that dignity. But the children did. Her parents did. He would play his part, until the final curtain. The rest of the afternoon was a masterclass in composure. Victor was on autopilot. A machine executing a social script. He smiled when someone told a joke. He nodded in agreement during conversations he wasn't hearing. He inquired about a cousin's new job. Internally, however, his mind was a whirlwind of strategic planning. Processing the new data. Calculating his next moves. Owen and Chloe, blissfully unaware, played on. The sight of their innocence was a sharp, physical pain. He knew this revelation would shatter their reality. And that knowledge was a heavy weight. But the alternative, continuing the charade, living inside the lie she had built, was impossible. His entire ethos was built on integrity. A system built on false data was doomed to fail. He had to purge the corruption. When it was finally time to leave, Victor performed the exit protocols. He thanked his in-laws. He gave Leo a firm, meaningful handshake that conveyed everything he couldn't say. He buckled the kids into the back of the car. Caroline slid into the passenger seat. Still glowing. "That was so much fun," she said, sighing. "Chloe is getting so tall, isn't she?" Victor responded with monosyllabic grunts. His hands gripped the steering wheel. He drove in a thick, heavy silence. His mind. A chessboard of escalating moves and countermoves. At home. The nightly routine proceeded as usual. A testament to the powerful inertia of family life. Baths. Pajamas. A light snack. He read a chapter of a book to Chloe. His voice even and calm. He listened to Owen's excited retelling of a game, nodding and asking the right questions. He kissed both their foreheads and wished them good night. His heart aching. With the knowledge of the storm he was about to unleash. He went downstairs. Caroline was on the sofa, bathed in the cool glow of her phone. A small, private smile on her face. The sight was like a lit match to gasoline. He didn't speak immediately. He walked over to the armchair across from her and sat down. He clasped his hands together, his gaze steady and penetrating. He let the silence build. A deliberate tactique. To seize control. Caroline sensed it instantly. The smile vanished. "Is everything okay?" she asked, a frown creasing her brow as she finally put the phone down. "No, Caroline. Nothing is okay." His voice was quiet, but loaded with a dangerous intensity. "We need to talk. About Dominic Thorne." The name. It hung in the air like a verdict. Caroline's face drained of all color. She froze. Her eyes wide. Her mouth slightly agape. In a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The composed publicist. Vanished. Replaced by a cornered, guilty woman. "I don't know who you're talking about," she stammered. But the lie was so thin. It was transparent. Guilt was etched into every feature of her face. Victor didn't raise his voice. He reached into his pocket. Retrieved his own phone. and opened the album of screenshots. He began swiping through them slowly, deliberately, before placing the phone on the coffee table between them. The screen illuminated. Messages from 3 days ago, he began, his tone cold and factual, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. The Maven Hotel. Room 812. Photos you sent him. Conversations. Planning meetings. While I was on business trips. He paused, letting the weight of each word land. 6 months, Caroline. You've been lying. For 6 months. His voice was controlled. A furious current ran just beneath the surface. She reached for the phone. A panicked, desperate gesture. But Victor snatched it back. No. You're going to sit there. And you are going to listen. He commanded. You owe me that much. After incinerating 11 years of our marriage. She began to cry. Silent tears streaming down her cheeks. But Victor felt no pity. Only a cold, methodical anger. Victor, I can explain, she pleaded, her voice thick. It's not what you think. He cut her off with a bitter, humorless laugh. It's not what I think? Caroline, it's all right here. In writing. Every lie, every hotel. Every time you looked me in the eye and told me you were at a corporate dinner, while you were in a hotel room with him. Do not insult my intelligence by denying the obvious. Her strategy shifted. The tears gave way to defensive anger. You're never here, Victor. Not really. You're always at work. Even when you're home. You live for your spreadsheets and your reports. You never even see me anymore. It was the classic deflection. The attempt to shift blame. He had anticipated it. Never see you. He repeated, his voice laced with a sharp sarcasm. I saw you at every one of Owen's baseball games this season. I saw you at both of Chloe's dance recitals. I was present at your family's barbecues every single month. Smiling and making small talk. While you were planning your next affair. I was present when you needed help proofreading a press release at midnight. Enver. But none of that counts, does it? Because you needed emotional attention. And Dominic was available to provide it. Between marketing meetings. Caroline was sobbing openly now. Her face buried in her hands. It was a mistake, Victor. A terrible mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. I'll end it with him. I'll do anything. Therapy. Please. For the kids. Don't do this to our family. You did this to our family, Caroline. He corrected her, his voice like ice. You made that choice every time you lied to my face. Every time you walked into that hotel room. Every time you sent another man a picture of yourself. Don't you dare put that on me. And don't you dare use our children as a shield. If you truly cared about them, you would have thought about them, before you betrayed their father, and destroyed their home. He stood up. Walked to the window. Stared out at the dark, silent street. The decision was already made. The plan was in motion. I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow morning. I'm filing for divorce. He turned back to face her. You can stay in the house for the weekend. But starting Monday, I suggest you find another place to live. I will be fighting for primary custody of the children. And I have all the evidence I need. To get it. She shot up from the sofa. Her eyes red and wild. You can't take my children from me. I'm their mother. Her voice was a desperate shriek. But Victor remained unmoved. You're the mother who chose an affair over her family's stability. The courts in Colorado will see it for what it is, a breach of trust that has fundamentally damaged the family structure. I won't stop you from seeing Owen and Chloe. But they will live with me. In the stable and predictable environment I have always provided. Caroline collapsed back onto the sofa. Her body racked with uncontrollable sobs. Victor felt nothing but a vast, hollow emptiness. The woman he had married was a stranger. A person capable of such profound deception, that he wondered if he had ever truly known her at all. Without another word, he turned and walked upstairs. He went into the guest room, closed the door, and locked it. And for the first time in his adult life, he cried. Not a cry of despair, but of mourning. For the loss of the illusion. For the trust that had been shattered. And for the perfect family portrait that was now irrevocably broken. On Monday morning, Victor woke before the Sunday. The emotional purge was over. He was back in operational mode. He made breakfast for the children. his movements precise and efficient, maintaining the morning routine with a deliberate calmness. Shielding them, Caroline remained in her room, a silent abdication. After dropping a cheerful Owen and Chloe at their day camp, Victor drove to the downtown offices of a family law attorney, Franklin Reed. A man with a reputation for being a sharp, no-nonsense litigator. He listened patiently as Victor laid out the entire situation. Not as a heartbroken husband, but as a director presenting a critical incident report. He detailed the timeline, presented the digital evidence, and outlined his desired outcome: a swift divorce and primary custody. Reed examined the screenshots with a professional, dispassionate eye. "You have an exceptionally strong case, Mr. Vance," he said, his tone reassuringly confident. "Colorado is a no-fault state. But infidelity can be a significant factor in custody decisions. When a parent's actions demonstrate poor judgment or create an unstable environment. With this documented evidence, combined with your established history as a consistent, involved parent, your chances of securing primary custody are excellent. We will need witnesses," Reed continued. Victor immediately mentioned Leo. He also provided a list of other parents, teachers, neighbors, all ready to confirm his constant, steady presence. Reed began drafting the divorce petition on the spot. Victor signed the necessary documents. A strange mix of pain and grim determination settling over him. There was no turning back. In the days that followed, the news spread like a shockwave. Leo, feeling a heavy obligation, explained the situation to his parents and siblings. The reaction was stunned disbelief and profound disappointment. Caroline's mother called Victor, crying, apologizing. Her father, a man of rigid moral principles, was furious, refused to speak to her for weeks. The solid front of her family had crumbled. Caroline's professional life also began to unravel. An anonymous tip alerted the leadership at both of their companies. The affair was a clear violation of policy. The consequences were severe. Dominic was forced to resign. Caroline was formally reprimanded and lost several of her key clients. The narrative she had so carefully crafted for others was now in tatters. The divorce proceedings moved with the efficiency Victor demanded. Temporary custody was established within weeks. The judge granted Victor temporary primary custody of Owen and Chloe. Caroline was given visitation rights every other weekend and one evening during the week. The decision devastated her. She begged for more time, but the judge was firm. The children's best interest, the court ruled, was to remain in the most stable environment available, the one provided by their father. Owen and Chloe were confused. Victor explained it to them in simple, carefully chosen terms. "Mommy and Daddy won't be living together anymore. But we both still love you very much." He never once spoke ill of Caroline in front of them, carefully preserving her image as their mother. Even as the anger still simmered within him, the children adjusted. They had to. But they felt the difference. With their father, life continued its predictable, reassuring rhythm. Routine was sacred. Stability paramount. When they visited their mother, at the small apartment she'd rented downtown, they sensed the tension, the heavy air of sadness, and the palpable weight of the guilt she now carried everywhere. A year later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Victor sat on the back patio of the house that was now officially his alone. He watched Owen practicing soccer drills in the yard. Chloe sat at the patio table, diligently working on her math homework. The air was still. The only sounds, the rhythmic thud of the ball, and the scratching of Chloe's pencil. He thought about all that he had lost. The illusion of a perfect marriage. The trust he had placed in the woman he'd loved. The image of the complete, unbroken family he had always intended to provide. But then he considered what he had gained. The truth, however brutal, the dignity of not living a lie, and the unwavering certainty that he had done the right thing for his children. Leo visited often. They'd order pizza, watch football games. A new tradition forged in the wreckage of the old one. They never spoke of Caroline with regret. That devastating revelation had been an act of loyalty Victor would never forget. Caroline, meanwhile, was living the life her choices had built. The relationship with Dominic had not survived. He had reconciled with his own wife, leaving her to face the fallout alone. She had lost her marriage, the trust of her family, her professional standing, and the daily presence of her children. She saw them on her designated weekends. But there was always a distance between them. An invisible wall. Her actions had erected. One that no amount of tearful apologies could seem to dismantle. Victor had methodically rebuilt his life. Piece by piece. His primary project was now his children. He enrolled in a cooking class. He organized weekend camping trips, creating new traditions to overwrite the old, tainted ones. He hadn't closed himself off to a new relationship. But he was in no hurry. He had learned that trust was a precious commodity. Something to be earned slowly. Through transparency. And proven reliability. Chloe looked up from her homework. Her large, curious eyes fixed on him. "Dad, are you happy?" The question, in its childish simplicity, caught him off guard. He considered it. Not the emotion. But the data. The house was quiet. The children were safe. The system was stable. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, his voice even and sure. "Dad is happy. And do you know why? Because I have you and Owen. And we learned that the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than living a lie." Chloe didn't fully grasp the weight of those words. But she smiled, satisfied with the answer, and returned to her equations. Victor looked out at the yard as the autumn leaves drifted down from the aspen trees. Nature's quiet cycle of letting go and starting anew. He felt a sense of peace. A calm he hadn't known in a long time. The scar of the betrayal would always be there. A part of his history. But he had learned to live with it. Transforming the pain into strength, determination, and a kind of hard-won wisdom. Dominic Thorne had vanished. Caroline continued on her solitary path. And Victor, the man who had faced the truth and rebuilt his world on a foundation of order and integrity, moved forward. He knew he had survived the worst possible system failure. He had protected his assets. He had restored order. There was no fairy tale ending. No dramatic reconciliation. But there was something more valuable. More real. There was justice. There was truth. And there was the profound peace that comes from knowing you have won. And that, Victor Vance concluded, was more than enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.